Good evening. Now I'd like to bring the regular evening meeting of Township Council to order. And the first item is the adoption and receipt of the agenda items. Could I have a motion, please? Council Davis, second by Council Arneson. All those in favor? Opposed and carried. Next is the adoption of the minutes, the regular evening council meeting of November 19th and the public hearing meeting of November the 19th. Council Ferguson, second. I think I have a correction on that. Oh, okay. I'll get a second first. Second, Councillor Davis, and I'll push your button. Errors and omissions. Councillor Woodward.
Yeah, do I have it right that M1 didn't properly reflect that Councillor Kuntz voted against the main motion? Do I have that? So what I had in front of me, I don't have it in front of me because, again, I didn't print it. But can you just verify that the vote for the M1 was reflected correctly? No, this is the very well-balanced main motion regarding Brookswood.
She voted against it in M1 and M2 voted in favor in error, she told me, but we can't change that now.
I think the minutes should reflect it. I think because I was here, you did correct yourself right away.
No, she didn't.
She did not?
No, so it'd be difficult to do after, after the meeting. So
okay, so the minutes are going to stay reflecting what's written then?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Yes, because that was what was recorded at the meeting. And the only way to change it once the meeting is terminated is to do reconsideration. And because Councillor Kuntz had said that at the time she was in favor of the result, it wasn't necessary to go through that process. So it is correct. Okay. I'll call a question. All those in favor, show of hands. Opposed? It carries unanimously. And we now move on to presentations. We have the Muscular Dystrophy Boot Drive. Please come forward. And thank you for being here.
Your Worship, members of Council, my name is Peter Taylor, pay call captain. Devin Bailey, next to me. She's the manager of Firefighter Relations, BC Yukon Division of Muscular Dystrophy Canada. And Krista Barton, she's the public educator here with the township.
Wonderful. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So since 1954, firefighters have been supporting Muscular Dystrophy Canada, an organization in support of those living with neuromuscular disorders. We are inspired every day by the passion and dedication firefighters have shown our organization, and in turn, the impact that they have on the families that we serve. In 2017-2018, firefighters have been across British Columbia and Yukon raised almost $675,000. Across Canada, the fire service raised over $3 million, equating to 30% of our annual revenue. The funds generated from the firefighter events, including boot drives, truck pulls, and rooftop campouts, allow our organization to support our clients, to invest more money into mission. And our primary mission spends are equipment, research, advocacy, and education. The Township of Langley firefighters have been supporting Muscular Dystrophy Canada since 1995, and since then have raised over $400,000, including this year's donation to our organization. Township of Langley Fire Department is one of our top funding fire departments year over year. With a little bit of healthy competition with the Burnaby Fire Department, they come out on top, having one of our highest boot drives and in turn impacting those living with neuromuscular disorders. And those funds and those efforts do not go unrecognized, as they truly embody the firefighter muscular dystrophy motto, until there's a cure, there's us.
This past September, over 3 days, we held out our boots in support of muscular dystrophy. It's not without the countless volunteer hours of our members, the support from our families, and the local businesses that allow us to stage the fundraiser. The overwhelming support of the citizens of the Township of Langley helped make this year's boot drive so successful. Township firefighters are very proud to be part of this giving and generous community. Together, we are making a difference in so many lives.
And so there are over 50 registered clients within the Township of Langley. Doug is one of them. So Doug is a 16-year-old teenager who has Duchenne's muscular dystrophy, a very progressive, multidimensional type of MD. It only affects boys. Back in the 1960s, boys with Duchenne's usually had a life expectancy of 16 and a half. Now we are seeing these boys become men and living well into their late 30s and even 40s. So Doug had an opportunity to visit the Township of Langley firefighters at this year's boot drive and got to show off his brand new power wheelchair that we were able to help fund in April of 2018. So as you can see, this piece of equipment allows Doug to be very independent in his life. And just to give you a bit of insight, a power wheelchair can cost up to $100,000 with all the modifications. And so this chair is especially special as it allows Doug to actually get up to vertical height, seeing his peers face to face, and really empower him with confidence. So these are the clients within your community that are receiving the life-changing support and funds. Doug is one of the many stories that ignites our passion to work harder, ensuring that we can deliver our promise to ensure that all Canadians with neuromuscular disorders live an independent, empowered life. On behalf of Muscular Dystrophy Canada, Doug, the members and clients of Township of Langley, I would like to officially present the Township of Langley Fire Department with the 2017-2018 $30,000 Plus Fundraising Award. Great. Okay.
And on behalf of the members of the Township of Langley Fire Department, we'd like to present you with a check for $37,715.23 in support of muscular dystrophy.
Thank you.
Do you want to face me? Okay. Sorry, everyone. Here we go.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Thanks for to the fire department for all the hard work, and thank you, Devin, for being there to represent muscular dystrophy and all the good work that you do. I really do appreciate it, and I know Doug and everyone else out there who benefit appreciate it, very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so now we'll move on with our agenda, and G is bylaws for first, second, and third reading. G1 is the 2019 Revenue Anticipation Borrowing Bylaw, number 5437. Could I have a motion, please? Councillor Davis, and second by Councillor Long. Is there any discussion on G1? Seeing none, I'll call the question. That carries unanimously. And we move on to G2. This is Development Application Procedures and Fees, bylaw number 5428. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Ferguson, second by Councillor Long. Discussion? Councillor Richter.
Yes, thank you. I note on page 4 of the report that the UDI did send a letter saying that they have reviewed them and the fees, and they are in favor of supporting the fees, but they want the fees directed to more staff in order to process applications. So through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Backen, is this going to happen? Will we be able to dedicate these new fees to additional planning staff?
Mr. Backen.
But the structure of the bylaw provides council with more flexibility, and as was suggested, this has been endorsed as to the UDI, and in particular in reference to the some of the fee increases that are being proposed to bring us up to, I guess, modern standards. That being said, there's no explicit requirement in the bylaw earmarking the money. That remains in the jurisdiction of council going forward as to how they see to appropriate those funds. They'll be included in the general revenue portion of the 2019 budget, and council can then use them as they see fit.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Woodward.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions. I don't know, just direct them to the mayor, to Mr. Backen, or to Mr. Richardson. In respect to understanding where the logic was for the 6-month automatic closure, if there's no activity on an application, would it be acceptable to potentially look at 12 months? Because in regards to that, I have another question, that if an application is closed and would the fees reapply if you wanted it reopened if it was automatically closed after 6 months?
Mr. Backen. Mr. Backen.
I couldn't quite discern that from reading the policy or the bylaw.
Over to Mr. Richardson as to the time length and the potential additional fees.
Through your worship to Councillor Woodward, currently, as you point out, Councillor Woodward, under Part 9(2), there's a 6-month, if the file has been in abeyance for a 6-month period, it'll be subject also to the applicant being notified in writing and given a 30-day period to respond. So it's the council's prerogative if they want to extend that 6 months to 12 months. However, it's noted here that we would give the proponent the ability to respond prior to us closing the file. With respect to the second question regards fees, if the file was closed, then yes, if they wanted to reapply, a new application fee would apply.
Yeah, so it's closed. It would be considered a reapplication if it was to be sort of quote unquote reopened. Would that be correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So can I make that amendment then? And I'd like to extend that to 12 months or up from 6. I mean, 6 months can go by pretty quickly if consultants are busy and some things of technical nature. If the fees are going to reapply, I'd like to see that amended. I'd like to make that amendment to extend that to 12 months, so these fees are not applicable to people that are reopening arbitrarily closed applications. Make that amendment.
Okay, is there a seconder to the amendment? Councillor Richter seconds it. I'll open discussion on the amendment. Councillor Long.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm pretty sure I heard it say that after a 6-month period, there would also be a 30-day notice given to the applicant. If the applicant then says, well, I'm in the middle of doing something and it's coming slower than I thought, there's no way that the file is going to be closed. So this, I think, in 6 months, on any contract that you might have with somebody, that's a fair length of time to let it go dormant. But if there's communication happening within that 6 month, maybe this is the question I'm asking, Your Worship, if there's activity on the file during that 6 months or as a result of the 30-day notice, surely staff are not going to close the file.
Yeah, that was a question I had too, Mr. Backen. So the file, if the applicant gets a letter and it's 30 days notice, and then the applicant comes back and says, no, I'm not quite ready yet, is there an extension, or is it final?
Through to Your Worship, staff would not close the file. Staff would work with the proponent on fulfilling the outstanding items.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Woodward.
Yeah, I just wanted to, is it clear that if communication is, I don't have anything to update the file at this time, I'm working on it, I'll get back to you, that the application would stay open, or would it be closed? Because the bylaw doesn't say that it would simply remain open if I'm communicating that I want it held open. If I'm not making progress on items, I'm not moving forward on something, that it will be closed. I mean, I would be fine with, some other alternative, maybe a 60-day notice period. Someone's on vacation for 30 days and they come back and owe us $3,000 more. It's just the idea that 6 months is not a long time in maybe dealing with some issues. And not having, if the fees don't reapply, if you reopen after arbitrary closure, that would also be fine. Just trying to get to the point where that if your file is closed, that you're not paying those fees a second time.
Through Your Worship to Councillor Woodward, if staff were to receive a response with respect to the letter as noted in the bylaw, staff would work with the proponent to fulfill those items, meaning that the file would remain open.
So basically, all I have to do is say that they're working on it and it stays open. What's the background to this, and what's the history? Have we done this before? Has it been 6 months, 12 months, or has it just been left open? And now is staff trying to get some sort of control on applications that just linger? And is that the reason for this, or what's behind all this?
Generally, Your Worship, I think it's been about 1 year, but there's been no provision to actually extend or no other provision to actually verify. So this is thought to be a middle ground of, as Mr. Richardson said, if there is some evidence, and that evidence can simply be a representation by the proponent that works are underway, that'll be sufficient to continue it. I think the thought process is by having it in 6-month increments, that might act as a catalyst to try to keep some of the longer-standing applications moving forward.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion on the amendment? Okay, I'll call a question. And it carries with Councillor Whitmarsh, Councillor Kuntz, Mayor Froese, Councillor Long opposed. So we're back to the main motion as amended. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Oh, okay. Is there, hang on, Councillor. Who would like to speak? Councillor Long.
Well, I think we need to consider the ramifications of this last vote that passed. I mean, what about coming back now for public hearing or a DP? Because if it stays for 12 months, isn't there also a requirement, therefore, that it has to come back for public consultation?
This is the application stage, though. Mr. Backen.
Worship, that's correct. This is at the application stage. I think the question is focusing on a dormant application in terms of the actual active application of itself. That being if something has actually been given readings or is in progress and then goes dormant. The current process we have allows for 12 months, so they must justify that there must be some activity taken within that period. If council is satisfied the activities bona fide and sufficient, then it need not go back for public hearing, but at any time council can revert a matter back for public hearing if they think it warrants it given the circumstances.
So, but this extension of to 12 months could trigger that, could it not?
Council could trigger that if they so chose, if they wanted to look at it that way. That hasn't been the past practice.
And now that we're voting on the amended bylaw, what kind of staffing additions will we need now that there's a 12-month period involved with keeping an application open? Is that what we just voted on? That now it's 12 months, that it stays active regardless?
I think it's already been that. It's just that staff had asked for a 6-month reminder letter go out, but now it's 12-month to get a reminder letter going out. Mr. Backen?
I don't see that requiring any additional resources, as the time lag would be dependent really upon submissions and activity from the proponent. The actual time lag itself, I don't think lends itself to needing additional resources.
Okay. Councillor Woodward?
Yeah, I just want to clarify again that the 12 months thing is the idea is that 30 days can go by on a notice and maybe you miss a piece of mail and now your fees are applicable again. If you don't make sufficient progress, your application is arbitrarily closed. The 12 months, I think there's really no excuse. The 12 months has gone by and you haven't done anything. I think some of those concerns are gone. I just don't want those fees to apply again if you don't happen to make enough progress, or the progress that within that time frame, within that 30-day notice structure. So I did have one other question though in regards to the UDI support letter. Is there a policy or a process where we consult with a developer lobbyist group in regards to policy changes? Is that a matter of policy or convention, or where is this coming from that we get a support letter from UDI? Because for me, if UDI is wholeheartedly supporting it, perhaps the fees are too low. And so I'd like to understand where this is coming from in terms of convention or policy.
Your Worship, my understanding is that we try to consult with affected stakeholders as there becomes changes that could be deemed significant from an industry perspective. We don't necessarily expect or solicit a response letter. In this case, one was provided, I think, to provide evidence of the communication and as well their position. Ordinarily, though, we attempt to notify and consult with affected stakeholders on a bit of a broader basis.
So UDI is considered to represent developer stakeholders within the Township of Langley, as terms of if they say they were consulting with them and they represent who we speak to in terms of gauging what the stakeholders, however we define that, what their opinion is of some of these policy updates. UDI is and again, where does that come from? Why UDI?
I believe UDI is one of them. There's also the BC Home Builders Association. There's a few other ones that I believe are consulted with. Perhaps Mr. Sefi can comment.
Thank you, Your Worship. The UDI Liaison Committee has been in existence for decades, Your Worship. And as part of that process, there are meetings that happen 6 times a year, every other month, as part of which, as Mr. Backens referenced, discussions occur regarding increase to fees, and the development community has an opportunity to provide input as to what we plan to do.
Okay.
I apologize for my voice.
Yeah, thank you. All right, I will now call the question on the bylaw as amended, or reading as amended. So it's G2. Carries unanimously. Move on to bylaws for consideration. Third reading. H1 is rezoning application number 100520, Dollywall. It's bylaw number 5404. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Richter, and second by Councillor Ferguson. Discussion on H1. Seeing none, I'll call the question. Carries unanimously. H2 is rezoning application number 100514 and development permit application number 100976, bylaw 5418. Could I have a motion, please? Councillor Whitmarsh, second. Councillor Kunst, discussion. Councillor Davis.
Yes, thank you, On. It's a 202 that's going to go right through this subdivision. Is there a time frame on when they have to have that road that goes right 202 finished?
Mr. Back.
Your Worship, there is no specific timeline as part of the development process. Once they've received third reading, they're likely to proceed with their other servicing documents and requirements that generally would take about 6 months to a year to put into place, perhaps sooner. At that time, then when it becomes fully secured, they could start their development process. So that would be the quickest process, I would say, probably a year or so, realistically. Again, hopefully sooner. The timeline, though, depends on how they wish to pursue the application and how aggressive they are in terms of moving forward, meaning subject to the rules we've talked about tonight with the 12-month, I guess, gap that could occur if the application goes partially dormant. It could take longer. Our experience has been, though, on average, is that we would probably see the physical works completed within a 2 to 3 year period.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. See no further discussion, so... Oh, I didn't see your button. There you go. Councillor Long.
Can we see the site, different, yeah, yeah. There was discussion about, no, if you please would go back. Here will work, I guess. Was there not some issue about sidewalks between the subject property and the church? That did come up at the public hearing. And I understand that it was noted at that time that the property in between 20306 is not developing and not owned by the proponent. But would there be an opportunity to put temporary sidewalks in between the subject and the church, or existing sidewalks? Is that something that could be considered?
Mr. Seffi shaking his head. Mr. Back, I believe that because it's privately owned property, it would have to get the right of way. Somebody would have to obtain that right of way.
That's correct, Your Worship. Our approach would be historically that we wouldn't encumber the subject property with the requirement to install final works at 20306, but rather that we would request that they would actually work with the landowner to, say, perhaps put a temporary sidewalk across. So the difference would be it wouldn't be curb and gutter with lights. It would be, if they were in agreement, that meaning there was no cost, land cost associated with it, that there perhaps could be an asphalt pavement put across it just to bridge the gap. But again, that does depend upon the cooperation of both parties. We've got no ability to mandate 20306 to provide that access, because if they chose to, they could take the position that it's their property and compensation would be required.
Thanks, Your Worship, and that's exactly what I understand. So how can we foster that potential to happen? Can we encourage the proponent, encourage the landowner in between if they happen to be around? Can staff at least plant that seed so that that could be considered? I'm sure if nobody asks, of course, you won't get it, but if there was a possibility that that could be installed, that'd be great.
No, that would be our process as construction occurs at 20214, as that's nearing the time frame for that to occur or is underway. We would then approach 20306 with that request. We're just being cautious to say that that's not a requirement. It would simply be a good neighborly approach.
So there's no need for council to, well, I guess we've mentioned it, so can we make sure that it is mentioned?
That's correct. We really, it'd be very difficult to make that an explicit requirement of 20214 without having a significant cost to the development.
I understand, but if we can make the request, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I see no further discussion, so I'll call a question on H2. Carries. Councilor Richter opposed. And move on to bylaws for consideration and third and final adoption. I1 is temporary use permits, bylaw 5419. Could I have a motion, please? Councilor Whitmarsh, second. Well, that's not, it's third reading, so. Yeah. So this one, so I got a mover, I need a seconder. Councilor Davis seconds. Discussion? I see. Councilor Arneson?
Thank you, Worship. I just want to, through you to Mr. Backen, I'd like to know something about the TUP policy that it says on page 4, because it talks about public notification if there's going to be a change of use, but that there's no public hearing that's currently required. I wondered if council currently has the discretion under this policy, so on a case-by-case basis we could decide if there was heightened public interest that we could require a public hearing.
Backen?
That's correct, Your Worship. By resolution, Council could impose that additional requirement at the time of the use is being contemplated. Do remember, though, that primarily this is intended to be a staff processing application, and that we'd be looking at this as, because of the short-term nature of it, to be trying something on a trial basis. But yes, Council could provide advice through that process that they wish to have a more formal public hearing.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. See no further discussion, so I'll call the question on I1. That carries unanimously. And move on to bylaws for final adoption. And J1 is temporary boring bylaws, bylaw 5423 and 5424. Could I have Councillor Ferguson moves, second. Councillor Davis. Discussion on J1. Seeing none, I'll call a question. And that carries unanimously. Oh, we moved on to the Mayor's report. Council report. So let staff get that up. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome here. Just a report on what's been happening over the last couple of weeks. On Thursday, November the 22nd, Council was invited to attend the local Christmas Glow hosted by Darvanda Nurseries. It's an amazing event, and now it's in its second year. It's very well attended, and it draws thousands of people from throughout the Lower Mainland, and they keep getting better every year with it. It was amazing. The annual Thank You for Carrying Christmas Tea took place on Sunday, November the 25th at the Coast Hotel. The event sold out, and all monies raised go to the Langley Christmas Bureau. I'd like to thank everyone who attended, and your donation goes a long ways to make Christmas merry for everyone. Later that afternoon was the candlelight vigil and red sand ceremony at Bedford Landing, presented by Ishtar and the Langley Seroptimists. This vigil commemorates the annual International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. And Councillor Arneson and myself attended the Langley Emergency Program annual Christmas dinner on Thursday, November the 29th. I'd like to thank all the volunteers, and we appreciate everything that you do. Acting Mayor Woodward hosted several Brookswood Secondary School students on Thursday, November the 29th, who were here to learn all about local government. Seem to be out of sync here. That was a great picture of the glow. It doesn't look like, but it was a great picture with Councillor Richter and Councillor Woodward and myself lighting up the Williams Park. So when you want to go see some Christmas lights on your way home tonight, go through Williams Park, and it's the volunteers and staff have done an excellent job there. Now we'll move to the next one, and where we are. This is the. I think we'll get to this one eventually, so hold on to that one. On Friday, November the 30th, Councillor Woodward, okay, that was the kickoff for Christmas in Williams Park. We did that. Earlier today, I attended the Langley Centennial Museum Volunteer Christmas Lunch. There it is. It's always great to visit and thank the volunteers who do so much in our community. And this is just one of the groups, several groups that volunteer at the museum and provide programming for school students. Events attended by council members included the Housing Central Conference with Councillor Long, took part on November the 18th, and Councillor Arneson Davis attended the Langley City Parade this past weekend. Upcoming events, we have a public hearing here on Wednesday, December 5th, and the Aldergrove Christmas Light-Up Parade is on Saturday, December the 8th in Aldergrove. And what time does it start? Councillor Long, do you know what time that starts?
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock, okay, so a great community event. So with that, move on to if anybody has anything to add. Councillor Ferguson?
I'll have you know, Mr. Mayor, that I was at the Langley City Christmas Parade as well.
Oh, there you go.
And I was handing out candy canes along with Councillor Davis and Councillor Arneson. I'll have you know that.
Thank you.
And which is even more important than this, they actually was going to bring my old, the magnet for the car, but they had a new one. I couldn't understand. Till now I have 4. So the second is last Tuesday in a Christmas Wish again, the Langley Christmas Bureau, they had a really nice event, the city of Langley at Newlands there. They had thousands of people, global TV and everything. It was a great event. I think Councillor Kuntz was there as well and others. So it was a great event. And so they raised more money. And what else? I was just about to say that I forgot what I was about to say. But anyway, it was a great event anyway. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Arneson?
Yes, thank you, Worship. Just want to make mention of the fact that there is a ceremony tomorrow that some of you may be interested in. As you're aware, Bays Blackhall, who is a longtime resident in the Township of Langley, she's going to be recognized as part of a Medal of Good Citizenship presentation tomorrow in Vancouver. So it will be my honor to represent her in the Township of Langley, and her family will be there, but I just wanted to put that forward as part of community interest.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to the agenda. Thank you very much. Other business, and so Councillor, oh, sure, if you want it. Okay, I'll put you on, Councillor Richter for Metro. Sorry, I was including it all in the council report. But,
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Richter.
Okay. Just wanted to give everybody the heads up. The new Metro Board of Directors expressed some concern at their first meeting with regards to the anticipated increase in the Metro budget for 2019. And so a special meeting was held this past Friday to help the new members of Metro, because there's 3/4 of us who've never been on Metro before, understand where the budget is and why it is the way that it is. The numbers, first of all, are astronomical and alarming. Second of all, right now, the total household impact for 2018 of Metro taxes and fees, and most of these are either property taxes, water and sewage fees, sits at about $506 for the average household. By the year 2023, this is going to rise to $722 per average household. So that's roughly a 42% increase. A lot of these can't be avoided because they're coming out as a result of capital issues. For example, on the North Shore, there's a water treatment or sewage treatment plant up there that was only providing primary levels of treatment, and the government, the federal and the provincial governments, have ordered a tertiary level. So it looks like the worst hits are going to come in the years 2021 and 2022. And I suspect that will have ramifications, not just for other areas of Metro, but also for ourselves in our own municipal tax increases, because essentially the taxpayer's pocket out there is not unlimited. And the infrastructure needed for water and sewer, of course, is essential for public health, and it looks like this can't be avoided. Anyway, that's all I have to report for now, and other than to thank Mayor Froese for providing a carpool into Metro. Great to use that HOV lane.
That's right. Gets us in there quicker. Okay, anything else from council? Okay, so now we'll move on to other business. Councillor Richter, you have the mic.
I gotta find my...
Councillor Long, your light was on and it's off.
Trying to figure out the map that Councillor Richter's using.
Yeah, I had some problems with the map.
If the fees were $560 and they've increased to $722, what calculator?
Okay.
Who's speaking here? I don't know.
Okay.
Wait a minute.
Okay. It's.
I guess Councillor Ferguson has the floor.
Well,
Do I have the floor?
Sorry.
Yes. So I'm trying to
Councillor.
figure out the math, because I came up with like maybe 28%, but over 5 years.
5 years,
I'm
yeah.
just curious to know how the 42%.
well, if you
It's
take
calculated.
$722 and subtract 506 from it,
506, not 560. 506.
506, that should be about 216. And then you divide 216
The 506.
by 506. I think it's 42.7%.
And this is for capital projects, right?
Yeah,
No,
most-
this is the total
total.
impact of the 2019 to 2023 financial plan for Metro Vancouver and all the related entities on the average household
and
in
the,
Metro Vancouver.
yeah, and the majority of that is driven by the water, as you mentioned. The water projects, capital projects, and the wastewater capital projects are driving most of it, and which basically go on to the user fees of those entities that are for those people that use that. But that's where the primary driver is, and as you say, it's because of the big projects that we're having to do in Metro Vancouver to provide clean water and then also to clean the water after it leaves. So
No, and
that's the driver.
I do
The other-
understand that, yeah.
the
I
other,
just had trouble with the math,
yeah,
but I'm also
okay.
just wondering what Councillor Richter might suggest is an alternative to getting all this infrastructure built for the region,
Yeah.
because it is pretty big ticket items, as you say.
Well,
I don't
we
think-
didn't quite finish going through the budget workshop. And it would seem to me that there are some things that, because they're legislated by higher authorities, we're not going to get around. We have to provide the level of service that they're dictating be provided. I still wonder if there's some discretionary spending in there in terms of putting capacity in place now that is perhaps not entirely needed now, but is being put in place in order to be ready for the growth that is theoretically coming to the region. And I don't know how discretionary that is, but that's certainly a question I'm going to continue to pursue.
Okay.
Containing the growth would be a good idea,
Yeah.
to just stop immigration for a while. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. We'll move on. Councillor Richter, you have a notice of motion.
Yes, I think I do. I just have to find it. Oh, okay, we got all the... Keep going. No, that's too far. Sorry.
And one.
Yeah. Okay, this is with regards to the Shepherd of the Valley Lutheran Church, and whereas significant concern was expressed at the public hearing regarding access to the Shepherd of the Valley Lutheran Church property from 72nd Avenue, and whereas there does appear to be boulevard land available for use as an eastbound left-hand turning lane from 72nd onto the church property, therefore be it resolved the council review the property access requirements of rezoning application number 100163 in order to add an eastbound left-hand turning lane from 72nd Avenue to 20097 72nd Avenue. I so move.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Woodward seconds. Discussion on N1. Councillor Richter, did you wish to speak to it?
Yeah, I think there's actually quite a traffic issue up there. Certainly came out at the public hearing with regards to the number of people that ignore the no U-turn sign and do a U-turn, or alternatively turn either north or south onto 201 and then do a U-turn on 201 in order to get back out on 72nd to access the church. So I think that there is space available there in that boulevard. And I think we should be putting a left-hand turn lane in there in order to prevent future access or future potential accidents from the U-turning that's going on there already.
Thank you. Councillor Arneson.
Yes, thank you, Worship. I agree that there are traffic issues there. I think the one thing that has been of note to me is that between the time that Councillor Richter brought this forward, we had received a staff report. So staff has, from my perspective, been very adamant that, according to them, that we have an issue, whereas the consultant's report, the traffic management report, indicated that it would be safe to have this turn lane there. That township staff took the view that it was in the shorter term that might be acceptable, but not in the longer term. So that's something that I've always looked at myself in terms of the cumulative effect, because sometimes when we make a decision in the shorter term time frame, we don't necessarily account for the magnitude of changes that will happen there. But I also agree with Councillor Richter, there are already problems in that area. I've been there myself about a week ago, and I saw some of the illegal maneuvers, I'll call them, in the middle of the street of people trying to get around there. And I suppose my broader support for this motion is really to look at the situations that we're creating sometimes in the township. For example, on this property, because there was a vacant piece of land, but it was always anticipated it was going to be developed, I wondered if there's not some mechanism through which we can attempt to consider future use and access to that property. If it's an arterial road, I understand that many would like to get on and off, and that might not be something that we wish to encourage. However, I don't feel that it's necessarily fair either to sort of orphan a property in this regard, because now what you're doing is transferring this traffic onto a residential neighborhood behind, and they're not really too pleased with that outcome. So I'm wondering if this could be part of a broader overview of our policy in general, but this area in particular, because I do want it to fit into the neighborhood, and I do want the neighbors to be happy with the ultimate result. I think it's important, but I would also then, not to transgress council's council has discretion to review these things. Staff has the right, based on the information that I saw in the report, to say, no, this would not be acceptable. And I guess my other question would be about liability issues. If we were to allow something like this to happen, and over the course of time, there was significant traffic increase there, which resulted in collisions, would this be something that the township potentially, I guess through your worship to Mr. Backen, be liable for?
Mr. Backen.
Your Worship, the current standard would suggest that provided when we put the infrastructure in, we meet current standards as best are known and current demands as best are known, that is sufficient to deal with the issue of liability. There is no, certainty as to when the additional traffic demand may occur. If that were the case, some of the bridges you see now that are over capacity wouldn't be usable. So from the pure legal perspective, that's the answer. As to the practical perspective, it is a challenge, because I do hear what you're saying in terms of the overall process and making sure that we have as many of the residents, I guess, comfortable with the decision the council should take. The challenge is we don't know exactly when we're going to see these increased traffic flows. We presume just because of our past growth, it'll be sooner as opposed to later. And we do know that the infrastructure, once it's in, having it removed is very troublesome as well. So as we look at the motion, we do see that the reference is for the review. And again, we can review it as long as the council understands that much of the groundwork has been laid by way of the memo that's in place. But I now understand the review perhaps to look at more holistically the neighborhood, if you will, the area, and just to verify or to see what else could be done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to piggyback on what Councillor Arneson has already said. Basically, that this was dealt with by the last council, and I know that through the public hearing process, the discussion is about that particular turnoff into the church. I did want to ask you, there used to be, if I'm in engineering standards between a certain road and a turnoff, entrance, exit, traffic light, controlled intersection. Would this be too close to, say, 200, or would cause something for even more of a safety matter than exists currently, if I may, through the chair?
That's effectively correct. As was referenced, the study that was done showed that at the current state, it might, perhaps would be acceptable. However, staff's critique of it suggested a look over the longer term, a longer horizon, and that's where the issue became known. We have a local example, which is on 64th Avenue as you approach 200th Street going from east to west. We have the entrance to the Canadian Tire store, which is very popular. Unfortunately, what that does is it means that when traffic is going to 200th Street to turn south, quite often the queuing will come back sufficient to block both lanes. Whereas if there was not that turn lane, it could actually have a longer queue lane and improve the traffic going through the intersection from east to west. So it's just an example of what can happen in terms of when it was put in. It was acceptable, but very quickly we can see how that can change given traffic flows and demands.
Yeah, because I know that Canadian Tire, it's a semi-suicide lane there pulling in there. We certainly wouldn't want to do that. And on the other side, we wouldn't want to put ourselves in a situation where if we do something, it would be more of a challenge in the future, and then there could be more of a serious accident. Now, as far as enforcement, my last question, people doing that maneuver, as Councillor Arneson calls it, is there anything we could do as far as signage or patrolling, through safety or RCMP or something to try to alleviate, if I'm through the chair, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Your Worship. We do have the provision for adding additional signage and to request the RCMP step up enforcement on a sporadic basis. That might assist some of the U-turn maneuvers that would provide short-term relief. As is shown on the picture, above you, the 202B Street route with a proper left turn could mean that there would be access off of 73rd. Again, we're very mindful, though, that the residents in the 73rd Avenue area are very concerned about that traffic, and that poses a dilemma for council. But when that property was, taken into account as part of the overall planning processes, I think it was always assumed that there would be access both off of 72nd and off of 73rd.
Thank you. Councillor Whitmarsh.
Thank you. I think this is a bit of a challenging piece, and I know we talked about this before in terms of a left-hand access. Two questions I had. One was in the report that we got from staff. It talks about having a minimum of 400 meters for that left-hand turn, and says currently it would only have a 200 meter space. But it says on here that they needed 400 meters to allow for longer queues and storage of vehicles. I'm not sure what's meant by storage of vehicles on 72nd Avenue. I understand queuing, but I don't understand the storage.
In this context, the storage is actually in terms of vehicles remaining for more than one light, not storage by way of parking. So as we look at the 41 meter area, if that were to be extended, say, to 80 meters or 120 meters, that turn bay, you can see the impact it would have on requiring a median in the middle of 72nd Avenue. Those longer turn signal movements are required simply when the intersection gets to be sufficiently busy that the intersection can't clear within one cycle, so it may take 2 or 3, and the purpose behind that is to make sure there's enough queuing space or storage space to allow for that to occur over the cycles that are going to be taking place.
Right, okay. And I guess my second question was, and I think we talked about it, but I can't remember, is there any possibility of any kind of access off 200th, just north of that small commercial building?
The challenge with that area is that's actually a storm detention pond, so you can't quite see it from the photograph, but there's a bit of a trail there, but immediately over the edge of the trail, there's a bit of an incline that takes you to the bottom of the pond. So if we were to actually try to provide some sort of right-in, right-out access, it would mean effectively making the pond smaller or making sure that the pond is made deeper to reflect the lost capacity. So while theoretically possible, it would be somewhat expensive.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Davis.
Yes, but that is a detention pond. It's not a lake. Because I brought that up when we were talking about it. But the township owns that. Well, no, we don't own that detention pond, do we?
No, I think we do.
We do?
Yeah.
Because, I don't know, I look at this motion and I think we did, I think most of our time was consumed with traffic patterns in here and not trying to send them up through 201. And, that doesn't, can that not, it's going to be a right in and a right out, but that's our other option is to have them buy that. And I don't know, I don't want to derail the development because I think it's a real good development, but it's tough to send all that traffic through. If you did do it with a compromise, people would come up and they would see that it was full, and maybe they could say, okay, well, I'm just going to go up to a once, but that human nature is they'll just stand in line and wait. I don't know. It's a tough one. It would make this development better if we could have a different way in there. Just my thoughts.
Thank you. Councillor Long.
Well, I'm confused here because we've had a public hearing and we've already given it third reading. So, I mean, is this requiring now a public hearing? Because we're revisiting it, and then there were emails being received by some on council, I don't know if all of council got it, talking about now the land use in the area, thinking that this whole thing is up for debate again, whereas it has received third reading. And I'm not so sure as there's that much traffic going to be coming in and out of here anyhow, right? Because you're going to have folks that are living there. It's a slightly different, I would believe, a different situation where you have a church with events on it and people going for the first time like I did and saying, oh, how are we going to get in here? I don't know how to get in here. Maybe I'll pull an illegal U-turn or something like that. But those that are living there will know how to get in and out of their own homes. I don't think it's a huge amount of traffic that will be going up 201. Not all of it would. Maybe half would. But my concern is that we've already had a public hearing. We've already had the traffic engineers tell us what the best way to do it. It's not even close to being a gray area. We're talking about at least twice as many, 200 more meters required to do a safe turn in and turn out of there. That's what staff's told us. So to me, I find this very disturbing to some extent that we're not traffic engineers. We have the advice of our staff. The public hearing was held, third reading was given. Now they're going to be moving on to building it, hopefully, and now we're going to go and revisit it again. I think that's just not appropriate. But the most scary part for me is that we see right in front of us, I guess you've got the same map up there, 98 meters to there and barely another 100 meters perhaps to where this potential entrance would be. That's about half of what staff are recommending would be required to avoid what's happening on 64th Avenue now. I think we should just leave it where it is. But I wouldn't mind having the question answered, Your Worship. Is this going to trigger another public hearing? Because are we not redebating third reading here to some extent?
Bracken.
Worship, a couple points on the process. So this is actually about traffic patterns for an area that already has been provided with a level of zoning. We've been very cautious not to talk about the underlying use. That remains as was discussed at the public hearing with the feedback that was provided. So as a consequence, that does not trigger the public hearing. Likewise, the communications that occurred were to Mayor and Council. We understand there may have been some blind copies provided to those communications, but the test we utilize has the Council collectively been provided with information in a Council meeting that would necessitate a new public hearing because there's additional information being provided that was not previously discussed. In this circumstance, then, staff usually would take the usual process of actually responding that any further submissions as to use will not be considered by Council. But in this situation, though, we're not talking about the use, we're simply talking about the traffic patterns as if the use had already been determined.
Well, thanks, Your Worship, but I would say that if our staff have given us their best advice, certainly Council is able to do anything it wishes, which can be unfortunate on occasion. But anyway, it would be very risky, I think, for us to go against the advice we've been given by our staff and install a left turn in where it's been advised not to.
Thank you. Councillor Richter.
Yeah, I purposely worded the motion the way I did because I'm not trying to re-trigger a third reading. They've got their third reading fair and square. They've got approval in principle. But I do think there's a traffic safety issue up there that we need to address. Now, the motion says that we review the access. I did personally think that putting a left-hand turn lane, which would go between the two purple spots, would work. There seems to be room there. But there are other options that could be considered as well, too. Like, how about putting a roundabout at 201st and 72nd? And then people that want to get into the church can go around the roundabout and go back to the church, and that way they're not pulling U-turns. Anyway, the motion is asking for a review, not a reconsideration, and not a revisiting of the third hearing. This has got nothing to do with the support or the housing that's going to go in there. This is about access, period.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? So I don't see any. So during the third reading, and we deliberated and discussed this at some length and got some good information. And I appreciate the memo that staff have provided us on the November 29th distribution. And I've read through it, and I know after the discussion on at the third reading, I was, although we'd all like it, and it seems to make sense to add that left turn lane, but the practicality of it seems to be making it not a realistic option. And just pointing out in the report or the memo that came to us, referring to the study that was received from that we're talking about, it basically says that the study only examined opening day and not the proposed, based on plus proposed development, the traffic volumes on opening day, and didn't consider the additional increase in traffic on 72 Avenue, which we're going to see. And when you look at the example that Mr. Backen gave us on 64th around Canadian Tire, you can see how over time that traffic queuing has caused some issues. And so looking forward, I think putting something in now than having to take it out later usually causes a lot more concerns. And then the safety concerns or considerations jump out at me. And it says that the traffic study submitted by proponents did not consider the safety implications of a left turn lane mid-block on 72 Avenue. During peak hours, the westbound traffic on 72 currently queues back past the location where the mid-block left turn lane would cross 72. These queuing vehicles would block the visibility of left-turning vehicles, creating a significant safety concern. And again, it uses the example of 64 and 200th Street and by the Canadian Tire we've already talked about. So there's creates sight distance issues and increasing the risk of conflicts with vehicles, cyclists, and pedestrians. So I know it looks like a great idea to do that. And I think, as Councillor Long had pointed out, those people that live there and attend that church know how to get in and out. We had great discussion, but maybe there's other alternatives, but I really can't support this. I think we got the information, for me anyways, I've got the information from staff that helps me confirm my decision. So with that, I will call the question 2 and 1. And the motion fails with Councillor Ferguson, Councillor Whitmarsh, Councillor Kuntz, Mayor Froese, Councillor Woodward, Councillor Long opposed. And now we move on to N2. Councillor Richter, your mic is on.
Thank you. Whereas censure of a council member is the ultimate legal tool a council has to reprimand a council member, whereas reprimand of a council member should always be a matter taken under full consideration of all the facts and not a matter of retribution, and whereas a simple majority of council can abuse the importance and significance of the censure tool, therefore be it resolved that Langley Township Council revise its procedure bylaw to require a minimum 2/3 majority of council members, currently 7 of 9 members, to agree on and approve any future censure motions of its members, and further be it resolved that should council proceed on a censure motion, the council member being censured be indemnified, as they will be incurring legal fees in defense of their role and actions as a council member. I so move.
For a seconder? Second. Councillor Woodward seconds. Discussion.
Can I ask a point of clarification, Mr. Mayor?
Councillor Ferguson?
If I may, to Councillor Richter, did you mean currently 7 of 9? Did you mean currently 5 of 9, if I may, in your motion, therefore?
2/3 majority.
2/3 is 6.
6 is 3/4, so around it.
No, 6 is 2/3. Yeah.
Yeah, so you didn't want the word currently there, did you?
Okay, we could go 6 of 9.
So we'll just take that as friendly.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Arneson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I wanted to make a motion to divide.
Okay, so motion to divide by Councillor Arneson, second by Councillor Woodward. Just show of hands, all those in favour for division. Opposed, that carries unanimously, so we'll divide. So discussion can proceed on both, but we'll be voting on one, the first one first. So you're on. You're still on.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to say I appreciate this coming forward. I think in light of last year's activities that we've noted that there are some things I think that need to be reviewed from my perspective about the way that we are managing some of our procedures. I know that this is something that is challenging when we have political discussion about things, and there is some controversy about it. But I don't think that we should be undertaking this very lightly in terms of censure. It is the thing that we are only allowed to do as other councillors against each other, and I think that it should be used very rarely, quite frankly. But I really support the idea of the 2/3 majority. I think that should be a threshold. I don't think a simple majority is enough under the circumstances, and so I would be supporting this aspect of the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Whitmarsh.
Yeah, I think on this issue of the numbers, I think it's important to remember that when we do have a situation like this and we have a council member that's being discussed and potential censorship, there is 8 people that will vote. The person that's possibly going to be censured is not part of the vote, is not part of that decision, so there actually isn't going to be 9 people voting. And so therefore, 5 of 8 is actually 62.5%, which is almost 2/3. And so if we do the math, it's basically very close to 2/3 anyways. And so from my recommendation would be we stay with what we have, which is a majority, which would be 5 out of 8.
Thank you. Councillor Long.
Your Worship, I take issue with some of the whereases here, of course, because it says abusing the importance and significance of a censure tool. I don't know where this abuse may be coming from, but my understanding is that it isn't necessarily a vote of council that determines where the censure would take place of a council. It would be as a result of an investigation. The investigation would be taken on by an independent investigator. And it isn't a matter of whether the 2/3 or simple majority find the councillor guilty or not. It's the findings of the investigation that determines if someone's guilty or not. So I guess you're talking about, well, will the majority or simple majority of council accept the findings of the investigator? In this particular case, on July the 11th, the report of the investigator under the township's respectful workplace policy found all kinds of facts that were indisputable, apparently. So it was just a matter of council accepting that report or not. So I don't think it really matters what percentage you want to put or what number, whether it's a simple majority or a 2/3 majority. The question will be, are the facts correct or are they not? And unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but in this circumstance, the one that we're referring to here, evidently it was the finding of the investigator that they required a censure. And there were some conditions that were applied to, and I'm wondering if they've ever been carried out, respectful workplace policy. But
yeah,
but no,
yeah.
we are talking about this.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, what is the
Councillor Long,
cost that's
maybe
in?
speak to the motion. Excuse me. Yeah. No. So this is to the future. That's right. So we can stick to the motion. Okay. Thank you. This is
Well,
in
it
the
says
future.
in here that there's been some abuse, potentially, by councillors. It says, can the importance and significance of a censure tool can be abused?
So we'll
I
move to the
can't.
future.
So what I'm saying there, like, I can't see how that can be, because if there was a motion to censor, there would have to be an investigation, right?
Of some sort. Okay. Thank you. Councillor Woodward.
I mean, yeah, I think we're referring to the censure tool in terms of going forward based upon its use in the past. So there's, I mean, being in the audience last term, it doesn't look good when censure is occurring during the campaign. And so I think I support this part of the motion simply to ensure that there's a higher barrier to ensure that the censure tool is not political. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Davis.
Yeah, I just, maybe to repeat that, I would support 2/3, but now I'm wondering what 2/3 is. Because the fact is that we do take out one member.
So if there's 8 members voting, it requires a vote of 6 because you round up. Is that correct, Ms. Bauer? You're the one that has the magic list there. I've seen it. Yeah. So it requires 6 of the 8.
Yes, it would require 6 of the 8.
That's right. Or 6 of the 9 because
Excuse
of the
me.
rounding. Yeah.
That was township property that you lost.
Okay.
Okay, I still have the mic. So it's 6 out of 8. So I guess this currently 7, out of 9, we're gonna change that so it says 2/3 or 6 out of 8.
Yeah, well, let's just say 2/3 and having
2/3.
having a number there.
Okay.
If it is 9, it would be 6. If it's 8, it would be 6. So it's the same.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Ferguson.
No, the thank yous are in order. First of all, I'd like to thank Councillor Arneson for dividing this motion, because it does help us in making a decision. And we're splitting the hairs at 5 and 6. I don't think, with a new council here, I don't think this council should ever, 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 in its history again, ever sanction another councillor, because we are all here for the same reason, for the benefit of the community. We should not be acting in any way whatsoever that would even bring an investigation or anything like that. And I wasn't part of that. I think we need to move forward. I don't think this particular is a bad thing adding. I'm going to support this one part. I don't know if I can support the next. And I think we've got to move forward. I think we have to have a little more respect. And I hope this council and future councils never have to ever sanction another member of council.
Thank you. I think we all feel the same. Any further discussion on the first part of N2, or on any of it actually, if you want to speak to any of it. So I'm going to call a question on the first part of N2. And it carries with Councillor Whitmarsh, Mayor Froese, Councillor Long opposed. And so now we're on to the second part. And if anybody has any further discussion on the second part of the motion. Councillor Arneson?
I don't know. Maybe we should did Councillor Richter want to speak to this part of it, or not necessarily? I do have some comments about it, but yeah, fine. This one is why I wanted to divide it. I find this a lot more problematic just because of the language without any further discussion about what this would mean. So I'm going to call this rather murky, because when you're talking about, from my perspective, if somebody is in the course of doing their job, that's really a broad kind of characterization of the activity. So I tried to imagine what that could look like and how there be certain activities that may arise from doing the course of your duties that certainly I think could be problematic and would probably give rise to a breach. So without any further distinctions there, I'm just going to use the analogy of, is it manslaughter or is it first-degree murder? The degree to which somebody has actually got some intent and doing the wrong thing. I think that if this was something that I could support, I would support if it came back with some case law or some kind of precedence or understanding the degree to which, if we have a continuum, if somebody is inadvertently doing something, that's one thing. But if this is, some kind of a gross breach, then that would be a different thing. And I think most of us would probably be less than comfortable in condoning that and saying that that shouldn't be censured if that were to be the case.
Thank you. Councillor Richter.
Well, in the two censures that I've been witness to or part of, it seems to me that the council of the day were upset and they decided to take action. And in a democracy, we have the right to defend ourselves. But what I don't think is fair is having to defend ourselves by having to pay the significant legal fees that we have had to pay in order to, because I don't think any of us would willingly go out and drop 25 grand on a lawyer if we thought we were wrong. And I think that being censured is stressful and upsetting enough that having to add legal fees in defense of what you thought you were doing in the right is an unfair insult. And I think that if you are censured, you are defending your position. You're not attacking the council. You're defending yourself from the council. And because you are in a defensive position, those legal fees should be covered. That's what this is saying.
Thank you. Councillor Woodward.
Yeah, I also want to thank Councillor Anderson for dividing this because, I struggle with the second part, given that we've raised the barrier or the bar of the first part, so that if 6 of 8 people determine that the censure motion is applicable, then I don't know if the second part is really that important. Like if I think 5 is very problematic, especially given what we saw last term. But 6 now, if 6 of 8 people have decided that you deserve to be censured, and that the only real punishment from censure is bad publicity, as far as I understand it, and a judgment potentially at the next election, which is the nature of the process, that it is a choice to hire a lawyer, given that we have now raised the bar by one vote, which to me is pretty substantial to get, as we can see, 6 people to vote for anything. So I think that if censure motion does move forward with 6 of 8, that it does decrease the need for this second part.
Thank you. Any further discussion? So call the question. No, here's another one. Councillor Davis.
The comment, I just hope that Councillor Ferguson's words will be true to the fact. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll call the question on the second part of N2. And N2 fails with Councillor Ferguson, Councillor Whitmarsh, Councillor Kunst, Mayor Froese, Councillor Woodward, Councillor Arneson, Councillor Long, Councillor Davis opposed. Move on to N3 and Councillor Davis. Just before you I know you have a motion you're going to move, but I just want to ask, and I can't recall if this came prior to or after the report that the province is doing a review on monster houses, and they'll be making some legislation. Are you aware of what the province is doing?
Yeah, did it come? No.
Yeah. So I'm just saying maybe you want to just consider that when you make your motion, perhaps get a report from staff on what the province is doing and how that affects. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Otherwise, it's up to you. I don't want to.
I only have 2 sentences. Don't pick on my motion.
I'm going to add a third.
Okay. Be it resolved that Council directs staff to look at the City of Richmond resolutions in regard to monster houses on ALR land and report back to Council. I so move.
Okay, so seconder. So I will then ask for an amendment that we also ask staff to report back on the provincial regulations that they're proposing to
B52.
Put in. Yeah,
Yep.
that's part of B52.
Yeah, that's a friendly amendment, no problems. Yep. I kind of, yeah.
Yeah, so with the unanimous consent of council, we'll just add that in so we get a more fulsome report back. If that's okay. All right, so we'll add that in. And so did I get a seconder? Councillor Richter, seconded. Councillor Woodward, discussion.
I want to know, did you choose the title of this, Monster Houses on ALR Land, or did you actually send that?
It was trying to be catchy. It's trying to get the crowd.
What is a monster house?
It's a house where monsters live.
A monster house is...
Maybe whatever comes back can also include a
Do you really want me to answer that?
Monster houses, because I'm going to try to specify the titles of my notices of motion from now on.
Okay.
But it is generally referred to in the agricultural world as, in the ALC and elsewhere, as monster houses, large footprints, but whatever that happens to be. That's right. So I think we'll get some clarity from that report back. Councillor Davis, did you?
Yes, the reason I'm moving this forward is Bill 52 has just come in, and I'm glad that we added that on. The province they're limiting the size of houses on ALR land. Delta has done some work on this, and they've limited their size. Richmond just did their resolutions, and they've spent a lot of time on it. And I see in Langley there's a few popping up. And I don't like to see the ALR being used for building country estates. I think when you put big, huge, I won't say monster houses, but houses that are, 10,000 square feet, I think that they absolutely will limit the use of that piece of property that they're putting on there. They're no longer a farm. And I just would like to get a report back from Richmond and see what they're doing, and if we can get a report back from the ALR to see what they're doing, we could address this, because I know what's happened is a few years back, Delta they didn't have any, and when they cracked down on Delta, they moved. There was lots of big houses built in Richmond, and now they're going to crack down there. They're surely to come this way, and I don't want Langley to. I'd like to see what they're doing, so it's just a report.
Okay, thank you. See no further discussion. I'll call the question on N3. Carries unanimously, and so we move on to N4. And Councillor Arneson, let me get yours on. Councillor Arneson.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I'll just read the last 2 paragraphs of the motion. whereas the majority of newly elected township councillors showed support for affordable housing by signing the BC Nonprofit Housing Association Pledge in order to enhance affordable housing opportunities and options within the township. Therefore, be it resolved that Council refer these items to staff for a detailed report back on the adoption and implementation of these initiatives to be delivered at a future CPC meeting.
It's moved and seconded by Councillor Davis. Discussion on N4. Did you wish to speak to it?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to bring this forward. I know that I've already stated that this was an election issue, and so I just wanted to do this now as an opportunity to fulfill something that I think that most would agree is a huge problem in our community. This is not a silver bullet that, we all look to something to say, I wish we could do something very substantive towards our problem, but the crisis has not just happened overnight. It's been a long time in the making. So I think that this is an opportunity, as is itemized in the actual motion itself. There's 5 different separate actions. So one of them, for example, if I just point to number 3, this is something other communities have considered, zoning of existing and new rental developments as rental only. And why I wanted to put it forward to a staff report and a CPC meeting is that this will allow council to have more of a detailed informational opportunity to consider, should we implement any of these things? Should we implement some of them? Maybe all of them. And so that, as we had an earlier conversation about CPC meetings, is that the place that motions go to die? Well, I don't think so in this case, but I would suggest that we have many different things that we're moving forward with. We have a needs assessment. We have changed some other of our policies in order to ensure that we are able to advance affordable housing options. So I hope it would come forward in a timely manner if this is supported by council.
Is there any further discussion on N4 on referring to meeting? Seeing none, I'll call a question. And it carries unanimously. And Councillor Woodward, you've got 2 notice of motions.
2 notice of motions.
That's your
Yeah,
quota.
I'm not going to read all of this. I think everyone who's gotten a copy of the agenda, I will just read the therefore. And again, it's a detailed policy, and we did spend some time on this. Therefore, be it resolved that staff be directed to draft and bring forward an updated community amenities contribution framework for public input and council consideration, updated as follows. To create a 3rd category for downtown Aldergrove with an updated percentage breakdown as follows: 65% for an existing community amenity contribution fund, 20% for the existing Affordable Housing Reserve Fund, 15% for a new Aldergrove Core Area Plan Reserve Fund for community amenities, capital improvements, and land acquisition within Aldergrove Core Area Plan area, starting with multiple shared parking facilities, Township of Langley owned or contributed towards. Number 2, to increase the current developer community amenity contribution rates 20% to ensure the 2 current categories remain revenue neutral or only slightly increased, to instead become an amenity zoning bylaw, to exempt the Aldergrove Core Area Plan area from community amenity contributions, to transition the current CAC grace period to still be 12 months, but instead, via a step-up approach, transition by 25% per 3-month period, as was strongly suggested within the Rollo Plus Associates report dated June 27, 2018, and to include a stipulation as a compromise with the development community not to increase CACs within a new updated amenity zoning bylaw for the remainder of the current council term or a period of 3 years, whichever is longer, with no annual adjustments for inflation during that period, as is currently contemplated within the policy, section 5.4. So I'll speak to that briefly, Mr. Mayor, if I may.
First, okay, we'll get a seconder. Moved by Councillor Woodward, second by Councillor Richter, and go ahead.
Thank you. So I did spend, and I want to thank the staff for working with me on this a little bit. This is, some of the issues that we're seeing with these 2 notices of motion of mine tonight are that we're adopting policies or neighborhood plans very, very late in the council term. So I find it relatively reasonable and normal that people that are elected with a strong mandate are going to want to look at some of those policies that were updated or adopted very, very late in the council term. And this one, if it had been held a few months, I would have brought this up during the process where community amenity contributions were adopted by council as a policy. And the intent is to start to make real progress on moving forward with key elements that have been inside the Aldergrove Core Plan, within the Aldergrove Community Plan, for almost a decade now, almost 8 years since it was adopted in 2010, with very little progress, without going to residential property taxes. So you don't want to be pursuing objectives in the Aldergrove Core Plan using general revenue or property taxes, but taking a very, very small amount of the development success in Willoughby and diverting that to our struggling area of Aldergrove. This is a core principle of taxation, that you redistribute some of the success, and this is a very small amount, to our struggling area. And then once we have that, we know that that revenue stream is reliable, we know it's coming in, and we're not in the budget process to implement one of the core strategies of the Aldergrove Core Plan area, which is shared parking facilities. It's been there since 2010. And to me, we've adopted CACs very, very late compared to some other municipalities, and we've left millions of dollars on the table by doing that. So I don't find a 20% increase on roughly $5,700 or $5,300 per single family house to be unreasonable when we haven't raised DCCs for almost 6 years. And we brought CACs in after talking about them for almost a decade. So I also wanted to make sure, though, that it is a compromise, that we did anticipate annual inflationary increases, and we will not do that. This is front-loading what we were already contemplating doing, which is inflation, and diverting that to downtown Aldergrove. And as a compromise, agreeing not to look at it again, at least as part of this proposal, for the remainder of this council term, to bring some certainty that this isn't going to happen all the time. And we also need to start to make sure, again, sorry, not start, but this does maintain no impact or minimal impact upon development. When you're talking about 20% on $3,000 for an apartment that sells for $700,000, $800,000. In some of the whereases, I specified, and maybe council can raise the ones if they're concerned about them, but I did specify very clearly what I believe to be true, that CACs do not increase the cost of individual residential units. The market determines the cost of housing, not the cost to build the housing. And so this is not raising the cost of housing to the consumer. It is taking a little bit of the success and the profit, very, very small amount, over a very large number of units, and having a pool of resources to focus on downtown Aldergrove. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Whitmarsh.
Yes, thank you. I want to commend Councillor Woodward for thinking out of the box, coming up with some really creative solutions and ideas to enhance some of the challenges we face in Aldergrove. And so I appreciate the effort that has been put into that and coming up with something that's creative. However, I would say that added to that, this plan is certainly, Councillor Woodward may have spent a lot of time thinking about it, but it's relatively new to other members of council. We've had it for, we've maybe seen this for a week or so, and there is some other information that we've received that's helpful to guide us. And so my feeling with this is that it feels like a lot of information around this program sort of all at once, and difficult to make a decision without having some input from staff on how this might work. I recognize that Councillor Woodward has met with staff and talked to staff about it, but I'm not sure that most of council has had the same opportunity. I have a couple of concerns, and it doesn't mean that they're long-term concerns, it just means they're concerns until I have an answer. I have concerns about developing a CIC program that is different from one area of the community to another. And so I have concerns about that. I have concerns about the beneficiary of a CAC program being one community such as Aldergrove and how that might meet for other communities. For example, we know that we're moving forward with a Brookswood Fernridge community plan with 3 neighborhoods that are coming, And I'm sure that they will also want to have the share of CACs from the rest of the community in the same way that Aldergrove does. And so I have some concerns around that. Again, I'm not stuck to it. They are concerns that I share. And until we have more information and have an understanding from staff doing a full analysis of what this might look like, I would prefer that we would wait and whether we refer this to staff to come back and give us some more information or something. But I do certainly commend the idea, but I'm concerned about making a decision tonight on something that I think has some real potential ramifications for our entire community. And so at this point in time, I'm not prepared, wouldn't want to be prepared to support it tonight, but I may well be able to support it with more information down the road.
Thank you. Councillor Davis?
Actually, maybe just could I direct this to Councillor Woodward's. About addressing this, it says here, resolve the staff to directs and direct to draft and bring forward community amendment contributions for public input and council consideration. So they're going to come back with some pros and cons, and sorry, they're going to come back with some pros and cons with this, and they'll bring a report back.
Councillor Davis, I appreciate you raising the clarification. So I did word that very carefully because the CAC is currently a policy, and I'm proposing that we transition it to be an amenity zoning bylaw, which would require not necessarily a public hearing, but I'd like to have one. And then I'd like to suggest that we have one. But also with that would come a staff report with their opinion and their implications as they see it. That would come with the first and second reading as it would for any bylaw.
Okay, because I see public input and first, and then council consideration. So I guess that's what...
That would be, to me, a bylaw process that we embark upon in general. So that would include a staff report reacting to...
That would be after we could hash this all around. And yeah.
That'd be one option. One option would also be to approve it. And then when it came back for first and second, it could potentially have a very fulsome staff report reviewing the implications as we do for any bylaw that just happens to show up on our desk on Wednesday or Thursday.
Okay. Okay, I think that's what I hear, Councillor Whitmore's. Because that's quite a bit here, and I'm just wondering if Mayor Froese is only going to let us speak twice, and I'm wondering if and I don't want to throw this into CPC or CB but we're going to have, maybe we could have a report like we have before from council, from staff before this, we look at it. We've done that before, and that gives us an opportunity to talk about, maybe we haven't. I'm getting a look here, but that's what I'm concerned about. If I pass this, I'm concerned about, like Mr. Council Whitmore's. Thanks.
Councillor Davis, if potentially could be referred for a staff report prior to beginning the bylaw process, if that's something that you'd wish to see.
Yeah, I would. Yeah.
So Councillor Davis is making a referral motion to get a staff report on this. We're going to go through the speakers list first, and we'll take the referrals. One other thing I just want to have council consider is that we have been discussing our priorities through our priority session, and this is a fairly big undertaking. We've CACs, maybe there may be a good place to put it on our priority session also.
Can I just comment that though?
Yeah.
I'm concerned about that because there's 100 things up on the wall, and this could be lumped in and lost it. That's what I'm...
It's not important enough, then it could be.
Yeah, report back right to us would come right back with this.
Okay, so we're going to go through just a quick discussion on this, and then we'll do a referral, just so people... Oops, Councillor Richter, you're on.
I think it's very innovative, and certainly Aldergrove needs help, needs a jump start. We've talked about revitalizing the downtown core of Aldergrove for at least 2, if not 3 councils now, and we still haven't really done it. We've put the pool in, but now how do we make sure that the housing follows the pool? I did have a question that I'd like to ask through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Woodward. Two questions. Number one, once we get Aldergrove started by having this special amenity for them, can we then change it to other communities? Like, could we change it to Brookswood or to, I don't know, Fort Langley, wherever?
Yeah, I mean, if you anticipate that, something like Fort Langley, for example, the revitalization there was not an overnight success, even though it's perceived it was 15 years. So, I'm not anticipating that this is going to be a big problem in for a council term or two. And I'm assuming that the CAC amenity zoning bylaw, if it went that direction, would be revisited more than once between now and a successful downtown Aldergrove.
Okay. And my second question is, what do you see the monies being generated by this doing in Aldergrove? Like, what are some examples of what we could use it for?
But, I mean, that's up for discussion. I think that, like, similar to the other amenity fund, I laid out a couple of specific objectives that are outlined very clearly in the Aldergrove core plan. I referenced the policy numbers within the whereases specific to remembering that we need shared parking facilities in order to implement a truly walkable neighborhood in downtown Aldergrove, and that was the community consultation process that was done leading up to the Aldergrove core plan, area plan in 2010. I'm just following through and trying to get those implemented without going to the property tax budget process, and again, diverting some of the significant success we're seeing in Willoughby, diverting a very small amount of that to downtown Aldergrove to get it going, and then exempting that area from the CACs. In terms of, could it be, I can speak to Councillor Whitmarsh's other questions or any other council feedback with my second opportunity.
Thank you. Councillor Long.
Well, Your Worship, I think that the premise is wrong on this motion. I really don't understand where the logic comes that development costs are not affected by what fees and charges are put onto a development. There has to be a certain gap in there for a project to be viable. So you can't just keep loading it on. And don't forget, we're going to have DCCs going up very shortly, considerably, as was mentioned, I think, somewhere along the line here, that we haven't seen an increase in a number of years. That's because it's just around the corner. We're going to see some fairly large increases. I can't understand how anybody would feel developing in Brookswood or even completing developments in Willoughby, knowing that now a portion of those funds are going to be directed to poor Aldergrove. And what is this feeling of poor Aldergrove? It seems to happen a lot. That there's something funny going on in Aldergrove. Well, Aldergrove is like any other community, is developing as the market sees its viability. There are a number of very exciting projects happening within Aldergrove right now, I believe. We could probably get a presentation on that, what developments are in stream. We've certainly opened an amazing recreation center there, but the lands that we vacated to build that recreation center have been sold, and they're going to be developing soon. There's other properties that are up for sale in the downtown core. There's been considerable amount of private investment in Aldergrove, so I don't know as we want to muck around with it. I think when government starts to do that, that could really cause an issue for the free market. As I said, if you were developing in Brookswood or Willoughby, there are strong and very desperate needs for infrastructure that's going to be required in these areas, right? There's going to be recreation facilities and so forth. And those areas are developing quite rapidly. Unfortunately, Aldergrove does not have the land base to do that kind of a development. We only have the core to work with because of the ALR restrictions. So there isn't the same land base in Aldergrove. That's one of the reasons it's a bit of a challenge. There's DCCs are on the rise just around the corner, and I think that's a real concern. So by adding more, if you're trying to revitalize an area, I mean, you're adding more costs to developing it, I think that somehow I don't see those matching up. But at minimum, I think if council's concerned about where Aldergrove is going, it should probably have a get-together with staff and get a report on what's happening and what the potential is out there. The last time we did that, which was about 3 or 4 years ago, unfortunately the numbers didn't add up. 2 and 2 equaled 3. And that was when you took your land costs and development and what homes were selling for or apartments were selling for, it wasn't viable. Today that situation has changed. Plus, of course, we have the services there, which we never had before. I don't know. For me, government should stay out of those kinds of things. And sure, it's an out-of-the-box idea, and I appreciate all the work that's gone into it. But I would caution against making this kind of a decision here tonight, especially. But even at all, I would say let's let the market do what it's going to do, And as was asked earlier, what on earth are we going to do with this money should it be collected? What is it that we're going to do in Aldergrove that's going to make it kick-start it or do whatever? We already spent $35 million on the pool to kick-start things, but I'm not sure what it is, what project we're going to put these funds to. So without having a goal, I think taxing developers all over the township to provide funds for a goal that hasn't been established is not a smart idea. So I would say let's just leave it alone, and I would look forward to a presentation by staff at some point. I think it was in our priority session on the potential for Aldergrove and where we can find ourselves going and how we can help in small ways to get development happening, maybe at a slightly faster pace. But the pace of development is going to depend on the market, and we don't have control over that, not by a notice of motion, that's for sure.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that certainly everyone in this room would like to see revitalization and growth in Aldergrove. I think that if you read the reports from those involved with the Aldergrove Recreation Center, say most of the planners, most of the people involved, recreation and the planning staff have said, yes, this is going to kickstart Aldergrove, and it will. And I think that we should discuss and continue to discuss ways of supporting those that want to develop in Aldergrove. I mean, Councillor Woodward has got an ambitious motion here tonight. I know it's looking like a referral of some sort, so we can discuss it and discuss some of the things that all members of council have already said, that there's a passion here to do something and do it right and continue on. I know certainly the Aldergrove Mall with some ideas, and of course, as we all know, there's not a lot of land base. We've lost out a couple of times with the ALC. But, let's sit down, let's roll our sleeves up, and let's continue keeping Aldergrove front and center for the township, because it is a little jewel in our community, and I think there's an awful lot going for it, and I think it's a good idea to move forward with it.
Thank you. Councillor Arneson.
Yes, thank you, Worship. I just really want to thank Councillor Woodward for bringing this forward. I know it was part of his platform in the election, but more than just lip service to the things that we say before election. I think this is wholeheartedly his vision and sense of very, very detailed research about this. I think the struggle at the moment is to try and unpack this in a short amount of time, and further review and analysis. Maybe it is the case that some people feel the free market will take care of things. I'm not personally one of those. I think that oftentimes the carrot and the stick need to be applied. The degree to which the carrot, though, is good and the stick, on the other hand, might be good, or, the equal amounts of both in certain circumstances. So I think we're really going to understand a lot more. I'm especially interested in Councillors Long's comment about affordability. This is one of those things that really gets bandied about a lot, about whether or not these CACs really appreciably increase the cost of house to the end user. And I would really appreciate somebody actually doing some number crunching. Councillor Woodward has done some, but I think for our edification, it would be most helpful to look at that and look at it over in a larger context to say, if the area has been redeveloped with this amount of input by the township so far, what is it that we should be doing in terms of a strategic plan? And I'm not talking about lip service to let's fix Aldergrove, but this is a very comprehensive plan. The only thing I would say is I wish to have a little bit more detail about how it would play out, and a little more input from council, I guess, in terms of understanding of what that could potentially look like, and maybe, just more of a timeline about what we anticipate that this would look like maybe in 5 years from now. So thank you again.
Thank you. Okay, so we've gone through everybody once. Councillor Whitmarsh has his button. Did you want to make a referral motion now, or?
I was going to make another comment.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right. I remember back, and I think most of council remember, back on September 17th, we had a presentation here from Ms. Best to talk about some ways to maybe reduce some of the costs of building of homes and the cost of homes in Langley with the suggestion that with some adjustments to bylaw revisions and design standards that we could possibly look at a reduction of a townhouse of somewhere between 5 and 10%. I think there was conversation there around not only design standards of what we do and how these buildings might look, but also discussing the rate in which we process our building applications, the application of DCCs, CACs, and the like, and to really look at that as a comprehensive package. And that there was a suggestion in that we try to do that within 6 months. We develop a committee which involved people from the industry to help give some input into that and to work towards that. And so, to me, again, I do commend Councillor Woodward for what he's done here. I'm certainly not opposed at all to the efforts that he's trying to make here. What I'd like to see is that we really consider a lot of those things that were suggested around design standards and permitting and our bylaw revisions that we could possibly do to reduce the cost of building a home in Langley, and find ways that could help to reduce some of those things and restructure the way we do that so that we could make possibly some adjustments in CACs. I'm not sure just increasing the cost of CACs and choosing a select target area to apply those CACs is necessarily the best approach, but I don't know. I think it'd be helpful to have a really comprehensive report from staff. So there's a lot to this. It's a very detailed process. Councillor Woodward is a step ahead of most of us on this one, and I think it'd be helpful for the rest of us to really understand how the implications of this and how this would work with our current bylaws and how we might revise all of that. So I certainly would like to look to make a referral to staff for a report that considers the work that Councillor Woodward has done, but also those things that we talked about from the presentation that was made on September 17th and how we could incorporate all of that to look at the cost of housing and to stimulate growth in Aldergrove at the same time.
Okay, so making referral.
That's my
motion.
referral.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Arneson seconds the referral to staff for a report to come back to. You've done a lot of work, but we need to, it sounds like some members of council want to absorb this.
Just a point of clarification, Mr. Mayor. Is it a referral to the workshop process, combining with potential for other items of reviewing the development process, the application process, or is it referring to staff for more information and some more time for you to consider the motion?
It would be I'd like to have a referral to staff for they have to come back with a report of the implications, because in the motion that's made that Councillor Woodward has proposed, there are 7 sort of itemized aspects to the motion. Some of them have very specific numbers of what those mean, specific percentages here and there. And I'd just like to know what the implications of all of that would be from a staff perspective. What are the implications of that? And are there some other creative solutions combined with the development process that maybe we don't need to raise CACs to accomplish some of the same things that Councillor Woodward is wanting to accomplish? And so I'd like to know how those things impact what we're doing. And so to me, it is a fairly complicated report. At least it is for me. Maybe for staff it won't be, but for me, there's a lot of components that play in here, and yet I think it's really important information. So I'm not sensing the need to rush on this. I want to make a really good decision, and I like the work that you've done so far, Councillor Woodward, but I think I need more time and more information from staff.
Thank you. Councillor Richter?
Sometimes leaving it to the private sector just isn't good enough. Aldergrove Mall was a problem 7 terms. That's 19 years ago when Councillor Long and I were first elected to council, and it's still a problem. I think it's time to try something different because the status quo just isn't working. Putting the CACs in a bylaw makes excellent sense to me. It's got more teeth then. Focusing in on Aldergrove as an area that we want to start revitalizing makes excellent sense to me. I support getting additional commentary from staff and report back from staff. I wasn't necessarily sold on the developer presentation that was made at the end of the last council because I didn't see any guarantees that the cost savings that would be achieved would actually go to reducing housing costs and not into developer profit margins. So I'm in support of seeing having a bigger discussion around a report from staff, and I think we need to move forward with this. At minimum, put the CACs in a bylaw.
Thank you. Councillor Woodward?
I just want to, before we, I mean, we're not speaking to the referral or speaking to the
Well,
main
it
motion.
should be to
I'd
the
like to
referral.
address some of the points that were brought up during the debate on the main motion. I think some of those comments are valid to bring up. But Councillor Long, you changed what I said. I did not say it would not increase development costs. I said it would not increase the residential cost, the retail cost to the residential buyer. You changed it to development costs, which of course it does increase by $1,000 for a house that's approximately worth $1.2 million. For CACs that weren't brought in for years, when DCCs haven't been raised for years, there's been millions of dollars left on the table. This is a very, very minor increase to accumulate a small amount of money, relatively speaking, to assist with implementing the core items in the Aldergrove Core Plan area. And I fully recognize that I'm a little bit ahead on this. So more time to digest it and think about it and give staff a chance to weigh in on it seems perfectly logical to me. I'm a little concerned, though, that it's going to end up in this, workshop and 6-month process or 12-month process we're considering and reviewing the development application process. And then you add a 12-month grace period. Then there's now 2 more years where you're not going to see a dime if we get lost in that process. So maybe there's an interim compromise there where we can refer it to staff to weigh in the first meeting in January, if that's possible. And that gives everybody some more time to think about it and consider it more fully as a separate item. I don't view amending the CAC process to add $1,000 per unit to be some big work item that requires 12 months or 6 months to think about it. But if we still do in January, then that's something to consider. But if you want some more time, you want staff to weigh in and address some of the implications, I'd like to get that feedback as well. But I'm a little worried I'm going to lose 2 years here on this. That's just my concern with what you've raised.
So point of clarification, are you then suggesting, Councillor Woodward, that we have an amendment to the amendment in order to add a specific timeline to it? If you are, then I will second that amendment to the amendment.
I mean, I don't know. I'd prefer it be a friendly amendment to what Councillor Whitmarsh is proposing. If we're referring back to get some more input from staff, maybe perhaps Councillor Whitmarsh would agree to make it more specific so it doesn't end up in the workshop process with 100 items on the wall.
Well, let me check with staff, because they're the ones who are going to have to do the work, and they have Christmas coming along, and we can make all the amendments we want, but they do have a work program, and how this is going to impact the work program and what their estimation of when something like this could come back to us, because I think we have to respect staff's time too. Mr. Backen.
Your Worship, we understand the referral to be effectively for a report with some of the comments that were actually made. The timing, by setting a specific date, would upset other priorities, which may be the intent. There is other language we, however, sometimes use, which would be something like as soon as practical, which means it is something to be done sooner, but not to displace other priorities that might be coming forth in the first meeting of January or even the second meeting.
I think if we could, if that's acceptable to council, we could put that language in there.
I'd also like to address the issue of the private sector versus the public sector. We're dealing with a situation in Aldergrove where the economics of development don't make sense, in the sense that, if you're dealing with a small lot of 4,000 or 8,000 square feet, you can't get Willowbrook style parking requirements on there, but you still need parking. And so that's why the Aldergrove Core Plan detailed very clearly shared parking facilities. Well, where's the money for that going to come from? It's not, and I don't feel that we should be imposing that on property taxes. So that's where this solution is, where it's in the right direction to avoid that process. And I just respectfully disagree with Councillor Long that we're going to sit around and let the market sort it out in Aldergrove, because I don't want to be on council for 6 terms dealing with the same situation in Aldergrove like Councillor Long is. So I think we need to get on with it, and I believe this is an appropriate method to move forward.
This is a referral. Let's keep it to the referral so we can kind of move along. We've got a big agenda. Councillor Long, did you have anything you're on the referral? Let's keep this to the referral.
I'm quite optimistic that things are turning around a lot faster than many on council may believe in Aldergrove, because I live there and I see it happening. But to me, the premise to be collecting money from around the township and firing it into Aldergrove for some perceived method of boosting its economy, to me, it's wrong. I don't think it's absolutely wrong to be diverting those CACs there when the need is very apparent where the development is happening. So if I'm building a house in Brookswood, I want those CSEs to go into Brookswood. And I don't know if even the bylaw that we've been discussing, which I didn't agree with, by the way, is going to even accomplish that, because it's also, I think, incorrect to say that we haven't been collecting CACs, and there's millions of dollars on the table, because up until the council decided to revisit the whole issue, we were bargaining and negotiating on a project-by-project basis. And so we maybe didn't have a DCC bylaw, but we were collecting all kinds of amenities for the community, usually where the development was occurring, in the tune of many, many thousands of dollars. You know, take, for example, the traffic light at 56 and 248, just down from where you are, Your Worship. That didn't come from any taxpayers' money. That came from a contribution for a project down the road, as well as some other improvements. Anyway, I think that CACs need to be appropriately spent upon projects that enhance the development by which they're collected. So firing them into Aldergrove, to me, that's just not fair.
So I think it's what this referral will do. Staff have taken notes, and they'll be commenting on some of those philosophies and policies. So with that, I'm going to call the question on the referral. Yes, we did. Yeah.
So just repeat it.
So the referral is, do you have the referral motion?
So the referral would read that the item be referred to staff to report on the implications of the suggestions, and that report back to council with report as soon as practical.
Thank you. So call the question. Carries with Councillor Long opposed. Move on to N6. Okay, clear that queue. Just give me a second here. Councillor Woodward.
So again, I'll just read the last couple of whereases. Actually, no, I'm going to read it all. I know it's a bit long in the night here, but I think it's some of the whereases are important. Whereas the current business park gateway commercial land use areas in the northeast corner of the recently adopted Williams neighborhood plan, adjacent to the new 216th interchange and the Trinity Western University District, currently contemplate auto-oriented development with strip mall designs, extensive surface parking lots, drive-throughs, gas station, all with little meaningful mixed-use innovative urban design. Whereas the Sustainability Charter outlines that Council will provide leadership for a sustainable future. Whereas the Sustainability Charter outlines that as a community and corporation, we should focus on compact urban form and mixed-use neighborhoods, focus on high-quality design, and encourage and facilitate transit-oriented development. Whereas special study areas are currently in use within the Latimer Neighborhood Plan for defined important locations with unique interest to the Township of Langley to ensure appropriate quality development, such as adjacent to the Langley Event Center. Whereas in the Latimer Neighborhood Plan, a special study area is an effective tool for a review of planning policies for these areas to ensure we determine appropriate future land uses to identify and preserve lands that require further study before development can take place, which is 5.2.7. Whereas a special study area for an important, strictly defined, specified area within a neighborhood plan does not prevent the remainder of a plan from moving forward. Therefore, be it resolved that staff be directed to bring forward a Williams Neighborhood Plan amendment to declare its northeast corner with commercial use designations a special study area to establish the optimal use of this land in the Township of Langley's long-term interest, facilitate improved, more innovative land use planning, and ensure council input is considered as applications are received and processed. I so move.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Davis seconds.
I'll just wait for other people to weigh in.
Okay, sure. Okay, so discussion?
None?
Councillor Davis?
Well, I am concerned. I always have been. Like when we passed the Williams, there was quite a bit of controversy about what we're going to do with that area, and we went from, I forget exactly how many acres, but we increased it, and because it's sitting on Highway 1, I had always therefore facilitate improved, more innovative land use planning. That's good, and it does not stop it from continuing the applications. It just says that we ensure council input is considered as applications are received and processed. And that means that we can maybe do something as it changes. It's sitting right on Highway 1. Maybe it will change, and we need to be ahead of that ball. There's a lot of stuff in here that is, we're not stopping it. We're just by this. Therefore, we're just looking at putting a special area in, and that special study area means, and correct me if I'm wrong, Councillor Woodwards, what it means is that we're looking at it to be considered to use more innovation and to make it different as we proceed without stalling the plan. My thoughts.
Thank you. Councillor Woodward.
Yeah, I will speak a little bit more to it. The Williams Neighborhood Plan was adopted on the last council meeting before the election. So again, we're in this situation where we're going to be administrating this neighborhood plan now, and it was adopted 20 days before the election at the last council meeting. Whereas, for example, the supportive housing project that we're dealing with on Wednesday night was kicked to this council. The tree bylaw was deferred a year for the next council to deal with it. But we're adopting neighborhood plans the last council meeting before an election. And that neighborhood plan is not terrible. This solution for a special study area does not hold up all of the landowners and people that want to develop the residential portion. And really the intent here is to put a label on it. We need to do a little bit better than what's in the plan if you read it. And right now it's gas stations, it's Starbucks with a drive-through, a grocery store, a single-story grocery store with a parking lot in front of it, and business park with parking lots all around them. And that's what we're going to put in one of our last employment lands. So it's very similar to what we have at 86th Avenue and 200th Street. Gas station, Starbucks, and parking lots. It's to the point where the developer of Willoughby Town Center was presenting to council, using it as an example for him to not have to do underground parking anymore. And so this needs to be revisited just a little bit, just make it a little bit better, just add some component, maybe look at some other ideas. Perhaps they were looked at before, but I'd like to get some rationale why they're rejected. Just add a little bit more, a little bit better, not a wholesale revisit. Consider the two property landowners that own most of that, if not all of the real estate. If they have good applications coming forward, then a special study area won't affect them. Something like Thunderbird, for example, where you still have a single-story Starbucks, you still have a single-story Shoppers Drug Mart, but you have a few people living there. We're also in close proximity to Trinity Western University, and this is potentially got some unique opportunity with that. We're also developing this that you get off of 216th, you get out of your car, go to your single-story strip mall to get your groceries, get back in your car, and drive to your townhouse. We have to start to move away from that development. We're never going to get transit in our lifetimes if we keep building audio-oriented strip mall development. And all I'm asking for is to put a little bit of a label on it, revisit it a little bit, and reconsider it, which I feel we should have had the opportunity to do by not adopting it the last council meeting before the election.
Thank you. I'm going to weigh into it now. So that means that every motion that happened at the last council meeting of the last term is now meaningless. I find that hard to believe. This is something that's been worked on for the entire term of council. And I think it's incumbent on a council when they work on a community plan like this that they should start it and finish it. And I think it was great that council did consider it doesn't matter if it's the last meeting, they considered it. Comparing this to a tree bylaw, which is something that, really to start that whole process at the end of the term, I thought the council felt it was better to start it with a new council. The Williams plan started way back and it was completed. The Quality Inn isn't our project. This was our project. Quality Inn is brought to us by the province of British Columbia. It's not ours. So if they decide to put it after the election, that's their decision, not our decision. So I don't think we'd be going through every motion just because it was the last council meeting of the election. The Latimer plan went through a thorough public input process. It went through many months of that with lots of people who live in that area had input. And I'm sure we didn't get we weren't able to please everyone, but at the end, but like all of these plans, the input was considered and the plan came through council and it was passed. There's other reasons to look at this, but just because it was passed on the last meeting of council of the term, council doesn't stop working. There's no writ drop where government stops. It works in local government. We continue our work. And this thing was started at the beginning of the term pretty much. And that council worked its way through it and adopted it. So that argument is kind of weak. There is going to be, I think it's going to be a great area. It's contemplated a hotel in there. And yes, it is car-oriented. It's right on the corner of a freeway. Highway 1, the major east-west connector of Canada. So yeah, there's going to be some car-oriented services there because when I travel down Highway 1, I like to pull off, get my gas, get my coffee, and go again. And certainly there's a lot of other innovative features in the Williams plan. To single out one little corner and say that this is something that we have to have a special study area to, the plan's done. It's finished. I think when the developments come to us in council, we'll have an opportunity to review those development permits and have our suggestions within that plan, and that's where we'll have our input. But to do it now, I think, is not appropriate. So I'll go through the speakers list. Councillor Whitmarsh.
Just as a question through your worship to staff, what can you just help me define or understand what is meant by a special study area? Like in my thinking, I was under the impression that a special study area would imply that we would wait and hold off and study the area until we determined what was going to happen there. But I'm hearing from Councillor Woodward and Councillor Davis that that's not the case. In fact, we can just go ahead and do exactly what was planned, and we'll just sort of study it on the side of our desk while we continue to move along with the plan. So can you maybe give me some insight into exactly what is meant by a special study area?
Your Worship, I'll begin and might get some help from Mr. Seffi or Mr. Richardson. I think, though, the confusion may emanate from what I understand the area to be. I don't believe the whole plan is contemplated as being a special study area. I think it's one corner or portion of the plan, if you will, and I believe that's effectively the commercial area that's under consideration. So if we bring up the map, I think what is under consideration is the area that's being outlined on the bottom right-hand corner of this slide. That's not representing the entire plan. That's sort of it's the northeast corner of the plan area, but it's actually the southeast corner of the employment lands area as has been defined on the map. So I think what's being suggested is that area specifically become the special study area. In so doing, then, I think the intent is to revisit some of the land use decisions made in that area. In the past, special study area designations have been put in place to allow further time to refine the plan area itself, the uses that are being contemplated. In some instances, that may lead to a sub-neighborhood plan, but generally it's actually to put it to allow some time for a further analysis, revision, or review of that area with some parameters in place that I think are being suggested in the clauses that are leading into this motion by way of the whereas clauses.
So what would be a typical length of time that a study area would be in place? Is that a year or two? Is it a few months? Or is it just up to council to decide?
Well, it's effectively up to council to decide. Some study areas have taken a very long time. Others can take a relatively short and compact time. It really depends upon the interpretation of the parameters and how far it is to go forward, how quickly one can go forward. In this area, we'd also have to review the context, just to be comprehensive, of our OCP and as well as the regional growth strategy. We haven't done any analysis on that. I'm not saying there are issues. I'm simply saying that's part of the analysis we'd want to do, depending upon what was going to come from the actual refinement that's being suggested.
Yeah, thank you. I'll make a second set of comments after a few others. Go ahead.
Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that if you don't want highway commercial, I guess you don't build close to a highway. You're looking at this particular map, as the new interchange at 216th, you drive in and you're driving along. I and a few others that coined the expression is a boutique commercial, not strip mall, not junk, not reducing the size of the road, taking out sidewalks, reducing all things, doing everything that a plan would ask for and do something different. No, it means putting in something attractive for people driving into a community. And I think there's some examples of that up by perhaps as we enter on 200th Street on one side, there's some development there. They're pretty attractive buildings. I don't know if they're law offices or accountants' offices with lots of windows and attractive buildings as we come into the community. I think that if you look at further down 200th Street, believe it or not, there's a McDonald's there where the drive-through is behind. They have their landscaping and building up front. They have a boutique, I call it commercial, pleasant building, and I think that's the idea of the future of folks coming in and seeing something attractive where something in the past has not been attractive. Another example of a boutique commercial is our friends in Surrey as you drive through Fraser Highway around 64th, where I guess the Member of Parliament, John Eldog's office is. There's a pizza shop, there's a Tim Hortons, there's a few other, but all of those particular drive-thrus are behind. You can't see them. There's attractive buildings, there's attractive facades, there's attractive colors, and it really is something the community should be proud of. And I think that's something I believe our planning staff wants to see when they come into the community. Attractive buildings, not strip mall, not poor colors, not poor facades, not reduced roads, not reduced sidewalk, not reduced lighting. We want to see complete communities built for the benefit of this community. I appreciate what Councillor Woodward has said. We had a very interesting discussion today about going back in history of planning. I think we covered everything from Planning 101 to graduate school planning. We covered an awful lot of ground, and I thank him for the discussion which we had. But I think it's important to note that we have hired planners to work on these particular plans, and I believe that Williams will be an attractive thing. I believe we will also have a lot of jobs come into that area. It'll be, as they say, business park, we'll have mixed commercial, we'll have other things in the area, and I think it's important to proceed accordingly. I had the opportunity to sit in the audience while the plan was going through. I think the majority of people involved with it, including many of the residents, are somewhat happy with what's being produced. So that's all I have to say, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Richter?
Yeah, I still have reservations about the idea of having a Canadian Tire with a big parking lot around it in that area. I think we can do much better. So I'm in support of looking at, as Councillor Woodward has suggested here, establishing optimal use. I'd rather see something like High Point in there, that kind of design with the underground parking and stores on several levels. And I also like the idea of council input being considered as applications are received and processed. So I'm in favor of the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Long?
Thanks, Your Worship. There's been a lot of time gone into this, and just the fact that the plan was passed in the last few weeks of the term, I don't think does factor in, as you mentioned, because the work started in 2015, and there was a lot of public input. So do we want to go back and undo all of that input and a considerable expense, staff time and expenses in developing this plan? But I think the unique part is, and I'm glad the map's up here, that shows this huge business park area, which is very unique to the neighborhood. So you can't really compare this to 86 and 200th or whatever. And if you look at Gloucester Estates and see that there's a very tiny commercial area at the gateway to Gloucester Estates, which is a complete bottleneck because the demand for commercial services from workers and those that are at the business park was unimagined at the time. And I think that this is going to accommodate what you're going to find as being a lot of commercial activity from those that are in the business park, the employment force that's there. And the mix of hotel and offices above is probably the most appropriate interface between the business park and the rest of the neighborhood. Again, I'm inclined to leave it alone, and we've gone through a process, rebooting everything. I understand the concerns, I guess, by some that are now new on council, but I was happy with the process, and we had a very fulsome discussion about the commercial aspect. In fact, I wanted to make the commercial store small, and many of us did. But it had a good discussion, and this was done. But I think that the key too is to remember that, regardless of what we're looking at on the screen here, when the applications come before council, we have every opportunity to ask for amendments, to suggest other things as we don't know what the future will hold. So if there's some better ideas that come along when these applications come in, I still think it's a fair time away. It's not going to come in next week. Council always has that opportunity to make amendments and suggestions to any application that comes forward to make sure that the submission suits the neighborhood and suits the requirements of our citizens.
Thank you. Councillor Davis?
Just a clarification. Councillor Woodward's, is it gateway and mixed use and neighborhood convenience commercial? Because I saw the arrow go way up by Highway 1, and it did half of the north spot. Which area are you talking about?
Talking about yeah, specifically talking about 80th Avenue up to Highway 1 with that road area there. So the commercial area and the business park area, or a portion of the business park area. The main corner between 216th and 80th, which is the bulk of that area.
Okay, you say this road that goes straight across. Yeah. So you're talking about what I would call the gateway, the mixed-use commercial, and the neighborhood.
That's right.
Yeah, it doesn't go all the way up.
It does.
It does go up. It does go in some of the light purple.
That's
correct.
Some of the light purple. Yeah.
Okay, I thought that it would be in this bottom area because we did talk about that, and we did change that area because we talked about it. I don't know if it was in a public hearing, but this area with those three, the mixed use, the gateway, and the neighborhood, that area got bigger than it was in 216th, I think. So in itself, our staff did make that area bigger. They didn't leave it the way that it had been. So anyhow, okay, I'm looking at that, and I'm thinking that, when a plan does come in, as Councillor Long said, we have the ability to change it, but we don't change a lot of it. We just change. Try to put a green wall on, or we try to do just a little area or something. I think what this motion means is that we're thinking that we can use this for better as it goes on. We can change this, and council would have a consideration for changing it if we just don't want to, because no matter how you dress a pig up, it's still a pig. It's still going to be a strip mall, even though if you put all the, so anyhow, okay, carry on.
Councillor Kunst.
She speaks. For me, after reading through the notice of motion, I have to just take into consideration that while this is maybe not the perfect plan, I realize that there's been a lot of public consultation, 3 years in the planning, from input from residents, the business community. So to now change the plan after investments have been made there, I just don't feel that's right. So I can't support this.
Thank you. Councillor Whitmarsh.
Yeah, this is being built by Highway 1. It is going to be a significant interchange at Highway 1. It is going to be a lot of vehicles that are going to go there, being a significant interchange. It does need to be an auto-centric sort of location for that reason. We do need significant expansion of a light industrial, which is what's going to happen in this business park. That creates jobs. I think all of us on council want to see job creation. That's important that we have that. And we have to have the kinds of commercial services that do cater to or satisfy the needs of all of the people that work, first of all, in the business park, and then all the people that are going to be living south of this commercial area. In addition, this is a direct link to Trinity Western, as has been referred to. Trinity Western goes straight down 80th Avenue, down University Drive. It's about 3-minute drive from the university to this location. The vast majority of our students are going to be driving. There is a bike path, and so some of them will bike, but the vast majority will not bike. The vast majority will drive to this location to access the space that's there. They'll need a place to put their vehicle when they get there, and they will have that kind of location. This is one of the things about the University District is we need to provide opportunities to serve the University District from a commercial space. This will be the closest commercial space to the University District, and yet it's still not walkable for those students, about 1,500, who live on campus. They'll have to drive to this facility, so it will need to be somewhat auto-centric. I think that after 3 years of public consultation, significant input that went into this, a significant amount of money that's been spent to develop this, it makes no sense to me to now pull back and say, let's make this a walkable community in this area right here, right beside the freeway. This is a business park. We want to create jobs. We want to create industry. We want to have services that satisfy those areas. And I think there was a lot of work that went into this. And I can appreciate that people would like to make some changes to certain parts of it, but I think there was a lot of work that went into this. And I agree with Councillor Long. We will have opportunity to tweak things. Applications will come to us. We'll have opportunity to speak into those applications on a case-by-case basis. But the plan itself was put together with lots of good input, had great, strong public support, and I think we should continue with what we have.
Thank you. Councillor Woodward?
Yeah, that's great. Again, I appreciate the discussion. This is going to, again, as a rookie councillor, second meeting, this is going to take some getting used to. I didn't suggest, first of all, as Councillor Long suggested, I didn't suggest to reboot everything. It's specifically designed to preserve 75% of the existing plan, which is 75% of the existing land use, 75% of the consultation, 75% of all the work that's gone into it. And I also did not suggest that we are going to now develop a walkable community next to the freeway. I never once said that. What I said is make it a little bit better than a gas station and a single-story grocery store with a parking lot in front of it, add a little bit more innovative land use planning to it. Whether that is defined as some mixed-use housing, to add some residents there overnight, to add some kind of neighborhood vibrancy beyond an office and a gas station. And the other point that's being raised, of course, is what we always hear, is that when an application comes to council, of course, you can make changes to it and we can debate it and discuss it. But the point is to get it right with the community plan itself, to also work with the proponents and say, this is what we want. And so this fails, what we want is what's in the plan. So then they spend a lot of money and a lot of time proposing what's in the plan. And then it comes to council. It has a positive stack recommendation because it complies with the neighborhood plan, and then we're supposed to what? Suddenly say send it all back? No one's going to go along with that. So we need to work with making a small tweak to this, and this was a solution to allow everybody else to move forward and revisit one small component, not reboot everything and build a walkable community next to the freeway. That's not what this is. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none. Okay, Councillor Arneson.
Yes, thank you, Worship. Through your Worship, I would like to ask Mr. Backen. I have some concerns regarding the fact, so we've alluded to the fact that this has been a long-term process and that it has been adopted. I wonder whether or not if we are looking in any way to, I know it's not a reconsideration. I know that there is a lot of language around the fact that we will still allow basically what is currently there, except it's a special study area. I just want to know if the Township of Langley, if there's been undertakings by the owners of those lands there, if there's any liability that could accrue to the township if we are in any way considering a potential change of use there. even just the whiff of that happening, because I have to assume, I know it's happened relatively recently, but I myself looked online about a year ago and I saw there was a business perspective and they were looking at who might be available as tenants there. So I know that these things don't happen within 24 hours after the neighborhood plan is adopted. So I'm just wondering if you could please make a comment about that aspect of it.
Back.
Your Worship, commenting on the potential liability is always difficult in a public forum, but I think I can probably couch it in this way. Now that we understand that it's the northeast corner of the map, and it's a planning exercise, and that the planning exercise has been done at the neighborhood level, Council does have the legal authority to impart a different direction or change by way of a special study area that provided it's done in bona fide and good faith, which is I'm certainly seeing that being the case here, should be able to sustain any legal challenge. I'm not anticipating one. But we can never control what parties do in terms of bringing their claims. But at the end of the day, I think we could sustain any challenge if that were to arise.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call a question on N6. And the motion fails with Councillor Ferguson, Councillor Whitmarsh, Councillor Kuntz, Mayor Froese, Councillor Long opposed. And is there any other business? Just need to, Councillor Richter.
Notice motion for the next meeting. Whereas the issue of safer access to the Shepherd of the Valley Lutheran Church from 72nd Avenue has not been fully fixed, be it resolved the Council asks staff to report back to Council on the feasibility of adding a roundabout to the intersection of 72nd Avenue and 201st Street in order to solve traffic safety and property access issues in the area of the Shepherd of the Valley Lutheran Church at 297 72nd Avenue. And I just wonder if I might make a request that we not get staff reports until we've dealt with the motion, please.
Staff report until we dealt with the motion. Okay, well, it is helpful sometimes, but Mr. Backen, take that as direction. Then we'll have to just refer it for staff report then. So. Councillor Richter's asking that there's no staff report regarding her roundabout prior to it coming onto Council.
Correct, Your Worship. As I understand it, it would simply be disposed of after Council's deliberations.
Thank you. Councillor Woodward?
I just want to know if I could get a memo regarding Latimer Neighborhood Plan Section 5.2.5, which is the mixed use definition. There's two properties, 20115 and 20139 80th Avenue, that are designated mixed use, but for some reason have an exclusion that they don't actually have to do mixed use. They can just proceed with townhouses. And that's fronting 80th Avenue across the street from Langley Events Center. I'd just like to get in writing why those two properties are excluded from the designations in the plan.
Take that as direction, the memo to Council. Thank you. Okay, any further business? Call a motion to terminate.
Termination.
Councillor Davis, second.
Second.
Councillor Long, all those in favor? Opposed, carried. We'll just give a few minutes. We'll start the public hearing in just a few minutes.